Welcome back to Don's Life. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to look at Novsight's Halo Series 3-inch light pods with 2 color DRLs. We're going to unbox them. We're going to look at a couple wiring options. I'm going to mount them to the truck and then we're going to check them out. Let's go. We'll do a quick unboxing, see what's in here, and then we'll get started. So it ships in this really fancy cardboard box. Inside we have information on some of the different beam patterns, which I'll talk about a little later. We have a schematic showing you how they're mounted and bolted together, all the pieces you're supposed to get. But we'll move on past the boring stuff and the specs and we'll see what's in here. So they give us this nice sticker pack. I saw them at the SEMA show. Let's go. You have a warranty card and the big reveal. Your pod lights, or ditch lights as people like to call them. So here we have all of our wiring. We have our relays and our switch all in here in the bag. We have each pod light. We have our mounting brackets. We have our mounting hardware. Now you can see these come with a amber cover on them already. They also ship you blackout covers because in some areas you need to have covers when you're not using them off-road. So let's take a closer look at the design. These are hard machined anodized aluminum. We have a hard-coated polycarbonate lens. We have the amber cover like I talked about. We have the blackout cover. We also have stainless steel brackets and hardware. These appear to be very well made. Now I mentioned this is their Halo series, so they do have other varieties of lighting available. Now with these lights specifically, you have 5 beam pattern choices. There's examples here on the box. I'll also overlay some footage as I'm talking so you can see it a little better. But they have a spread beam, a combo beam, a fog beam, a drive beam, and a spot beam. I went with the combo beam, which appears to be close to the spread beam and the spot beam all in one. We're obviously going to see how bright these look later on camera, but in case the camera doesn't pick it up, these are 3,450 lumens per pod. Now for wiring, these are 48 watts per pod, so that's going to be 96 watts total when we use the pair because these are sold in pairs. That's going to draw 4 amps of current per pod or 8 amps total. That's good to know depending on how you want to wire these up. Now how much current do the DRLs draw? Well, it doesn't specify in the literature, but it's going to be a fraction of the 4 amps per pod that these are rated at. Now let's get into the wiring, and it couldn't be simpler. We got 3 options I'm going to walk you through, and this would apply to pretty much any vehicle. And then once you decide how you want to do it, you just have to hook it up to the vehicle. So when possible, I like to use one of my spare batteries. This is an RV battery from our camper, and I like to test all my lighting first or my devices before I install them permanently on the vehicle. So the wiring harness that this comes with, the most basic installation is hook up the positive to the battery, hook up the negative to the battery, or ground it to the vehicle. And then it runs to the relays here in this control box. And then each of these run out to a Deutsch connector and then to the lamps. So we got both of them hooked up that way right now. I got the amber cover on one. I have no cover on this one here. And then the control box has this switch. Now this switch is completely optional. We can disconnect it and not use it, and these lights will still work if we hook up some extra wiring. But for now, we're going to show it with the switch connected and just the power and the ground wire. So if you look closely, we have 2 buttons here. This button here is for your DRLs. You press it once and you get the white DRL. This one has an amber color to it because of the cap on top. If I push it again, we get the amber DRL, and it's diffused a little more because this cover's on. So that's why it's much more orange. And then we hold it down to shut it off. If I just keep pushing it, it just keeps cycling between the 2 colors. So very straightforward. Now you might have noticed this is backlit, so I think that's really cool. And it's backlit the color of what's happening. So we got the white and we got the amber. Hold it down, shut it off. Now on this side, we have our spotlight, floodlight, fog light, whatever you ordered it as. Push that, turns it on, push it again, turns it off. So we have all of those functions right here on the switch. Now you're probably wondering, hey, can I have the DRL on and the floodlight or the spotlight? Yes, you can. So we have a white halo still there. If I push it again, we have the orange halo. So you can do both at the same time. Now, remember your beam pattern may be different than mine, depending on how you order them, because there's 5 different beam patterns like we talked about. Now let's say that you don't want to use the switch because maybe you can't really mount it anywhere. It's too hard for you to run it into the vehicle's cab. So let's just say we don't want to use it. We can still activate all of the functions. You'll still need this connected to power and this connected to a ground. But the green wire, if you tap it to your high beams, so the high beam fuse for your vehicle, you can find that. Once activated, you'll have your spot lamp. The yellow wire, same thing. If you want to tap your DRLs or your daytime running lights, find the fuse that activates that. We can add power to it. We can have our running lights. And the blue is simply for the white color. And yes, you can still do both at the same time. So let's put the amber DRLs on, and then let's say that we turned our high beams on, then we would have both colors. So very simple to install. Now the third way you can wire it, and this is what I'm going to do because it's just more convenient because I have so much lighting on my truck, is I have a main switch panel that controls up to 12 devices. So if I disconnect this Deutsch connector and I look at the pins inside, this is a 4-pin Deutsch connector, and the pin layout is standard. So what I mean by that is the power location, the red, is in the same location as the Deutsch connectors that I have on my vehicle as they are on this plug here. The black is in the same location, which is our ground. And then we have a yellow wire, which is for the amber DRLs, and we have a blue wire, which is for the white DRLs. So I can simply plug this in to where my old pod lights were with a standard 4-pin Deutsch connector, and they should operate properly. Now, if you didn't want to order a 4-pin replacement Deutsch connector, you could cut these, leave yourself room if you ever had to splice it back in and resolder them, but I don't want to destroy this harness, so I'm going to just use the existing Deutsch connectors that I had in there for my previous pod lights. Now, I could just use this wiring harness and connect all of these wires up to my switch panel, but you can see there's quite a bit of bulk there. I don't want to do that. That's why I'm using the existing Deutsch connectors that I have in there, and then my switch panel controls everything when it comes to fuses and operation. Okay, let's mount these lights. Now, if you watched my channel before, you know that I had pod lights here once before, and we're using our Putco brackets that are still in place. I've been playing around with the orientation of the brackets here, and I've decided that we are going to do them like this, which is the way that they kind of show in the instruction manual. But for clearance purposes, you could also do it like that. But the reason I'm doing it like this, and you probably noticed that we have a spacer in there. These are actually from those home theater mounting kits. They're just a hard plastic spacer. These are fantastic. They're a nice hack if you need to lift your pod up a little bit, because no matter which way I put this bracket, my wiper is going to hit it. Not with this spacer though. So just keep that in mind that you need wiper clearance. Plus when the hood opens, you want to make sure the back of the pod light's not going to hit your windshield. Those are just the considerations that you should look at before you permanently mount any of these things. I also like to pride myself on cable management. So instead of having the wire just come out the back and have it loop around awkwardly, I am going to tuck mine in just like this because it's got to go under the hood and I don't really want it to be super visible. So if I tuck it in right there, it clears this bolt, which you'll notice on the bracket has these little welds here that hold this head into place. When we go to aim this and tighten it down firmly, then it's going to hold itself and you don't have to worry about getting a wrench in there. But I'm just going to lay this cable to the side, line up the holes. I got the bracket the wrong way. I want it like this. Going to grab my bolts. I can spin it because everything is just hand tight. You can see my cables chased through there. And trust me, when we're done, it's going to look better. So I don't have this big wire hanging out. You can actually see from the side profile, it's going to be tucked away very nice. And we'll do it on the opposite side when we do the passenger side. So for now, I'm just going to eyeball the angle, tighten these up a little bit. Very easy to adjust later once we figure it all out. And now I can tighten up my bottom nut. Now, when I decided to partner with Novsight, I was going to go with the 6-inch version here, but then I decided the 3-inch made more sense just because the weight on the bracket. Also, I didn't want an obstruction to the driver. So I went with these because I had 3-inch pods before, and this seemed to be the right fit, and I wasn't going to have some of those potential problems that I just talked about. So let's mount the other one and then plug them in. Now it's up to you. You can install the bracket first, or you can put it on the light first. I put it here first just because to get underneath with the washer and the nut and having the light on top of it already makes it a little more difficult. So I'm going to do what's easiest for me. Just get it started. Again, hand tight. Now let's tuck our wiring out of sight, out of mind. So it's going to go on this side. Oh, these are going to look definitely one of a kind on the truck, which is what we're going for. Now these are ditch lights, so we could mount them like that. I found if I mount them straight, then when I want them to be ditch lights, I can just slightly turn them. And usually there's enough friction there that I don't have to worry about getting out the wrench and making those adjustments. I don't want to go crazy tight because I want the ability to turn them when I want to and then have it straight again, and they stay just as tight. You can see I got my connector waiting here already. It's just going to be a matter of connecting these. We want to make sure that when it comes down, it's not going to hit anything. So we're going to use some cable ties just to hold it right in there. This is the hard part because it's hard to see. Now your brackets might be different, but this works for me. I think I'm just going to do it like that, and then when the hood comes down, it should tuck away. Now I just want to make sure this drops down. It's not going to snag on anything. Looks like it's going to be just fine, just like that. Again, things to consider, but I'm happy with that. So the same thing, I'm just going to tuck it into the bracket there, find my connector, and then I just want to kind of cinch it up in there again. Okay, let's do our test. Nice and clear. Now we can test them out. So I got my switch panel remote here. It's just going to make it easier for this demonstration. So it's controlling the switch panel that's in the console of my truck. Now, if I press one of the buttons here, which is number 8, which is my flood lamps or spot lamps, they should come on. So they're both working. This has the cover on it. Take that off, and that's what we have. So let's turn that off, and let's turn on the amber DRLs. So there, they're both on. That's what it looks like with the cover. I like how the cover makes it really pronounced. Now let's turn on our white DRLs. So obviously with this cover it's muted, but that's what it would look like otherwise. And now let's turn on the floodlight at the same time. If you're wondering why I chose to wire it this way, and you haven't been on this channel before, you'll know I have a lot of lighting. So if I turn on the amber DRLs, I've got a light bar up there with amber. It's also white when I make it white. So the light bar up there is white. The light bar down here, the DRL's on, make it amber too. So I wanted it all to tie together, and I wanted it to all work with one button. So that's enough indoor testing. Let's get it outside, get a montage put together for you. So daytime footage, some nighttime footage, and then we'll wrap this video up. Well, I'm really happy with this install. These aren't the type of lights that you see every day. They're definitely not generic, and they stand out, and they give it, that uniqueness that many of us enthusiasts look for. So I'd like to thank Novsight again for partnering with me on this video. You may recall, if you watched my SEMA video from last year, that I actually stopped at their booth and checked out some of their technologies. They have voice control switches. Just think about that for a second. Head over to the website, definitely check out what they have to offer. If you use the link I leave in the video description, as well as the promo code DonsLife, you can save yourself up to 20%. Let's leave this video on a high note. If you liked it, hit that like button. Please consider subscribing. We'll talk to you next time.